All right, how you guys doing out there in the middle of the afternoon at Spookala? I love this low-lying fog down here. This is freaking awesome. So, I get asked during most panels, they're like, dude, you get up there on the stage all the time and you don't tell us your name. So I try to make sure I do it every once in a while. So my name is Matt Knowles. I'm from Symmetry Creations. We are comic writers, content creators, metal musicians, things like that. So yeah, that's what we do when we're not up here on the stage. And this next panel is near and dear to my heart, because like I said, I am a comic writer, a content creator. You guys got to meet the next guest yesterday. We got to talk about what he does in front of the camera. Today's panel, we're going to talk about what he does when he's sitting and writing, because he is also a comic writer and a content creator, and this is going to be a super fun panel. So without further ado, let's make a whole bunch of freaking noise for the one, the only, David Dastmalchian!
Thank you. Hi, Spookala! How all the monsters doing? Good. Hi, Kiki. Hi, y'all. Good to see y'all. Thank you for being here. Everyone having fun? Nice. This has been one of my favorite conventions I've ever done. Man.
You guys hear that, Spookala? Think about what he just said. He just said this is one of his favorite conventions. You know probably why? Because you guys did that.
Yeah, it is.
This
you
is
guys
your
have been
fault.
amazing. I've gotten to have so many cool interactions with fans, and the photo op is so cool. Deej puts such a good show together. This place is really rad, so thank you guys.
So you guys know him from all of the great, amazing, insane, famous movies he's done. The reason why we have this set over there for Late Night with the Devil. But there's a whole other side to this man, which is a comic writer and a content creator. So let's talk about what your main title is. Do you guys know that he's a comic writer? Do you guys know that? Oh man, how do you like that?
Thank you very much.
So before we get into all the titles, what is the title right now that you're like David Dastmalchian, comma, writer of, that you would have as the comma to your name?
That's a really cool and good question. The comic series that has been going the longest and that established me, I guess, as a published comic creator is Count Crowley. So if you love monsters, Count Crowley Volume 1, which first started releasing in 2019 from Dark Horse, was Count Crowley Reluctant Midnight Monster Hunter. Then Jerry became, in the second volume, Count Crowley, was she mediocre yet? No, she's now Mediocre Midnight Monster Hunter. And then I have Count Crowley Amateur Midnight Monster Hunter. And she keeps evolving as a monster hunter, but she's also a late night horror host, and we'll get into talking about that today. But be thinking about it. I love hearing from people. If anybody grew up with their own local horror hosts, I love knowing who you watched and who you love as a horror host. But go ahead.
So I can tell you, as someone that is a comic writer and a content creator, that takes up all your time. That's not something that you can just do and it's just like takes 5 minutes and you're done. How is it you're able to balance having such a deep comic repertoire with the acting career that you have and make them both be good?
Thanks for saying that, and I'm grateful that you think that they're good. I really am very lucky. I've been collecting comics and watching movies and loving horror and sci-fi since I was a little boy, and I believe that, you know, now as I'm about to be 50, for decades, all of these stories have been living inside of me and all of these ideas have been growing inside of me. So when I finally got the opportunity to share them with people, it's almost like half the work was already done. There was so much stuff that I spent years working on a fishing boat, in a movie theater, as a telephone sales rep, and all those jobs that I had and all those years that I would spend time going to work, being at work, doing things that maybe necessarily weren't what I wanted to be doing. I would always use my free time like developing ideas, characters, thoughts. And And the gift in being an actor, there's so many gifts in being an actor. I love my job as an actor. I love the characters I get to play, the people I get to collaborate with, the movies and TV shows I'm a part of. But one of to some people, a downside of being an actor, they always make this joke that if you're an actor, get ready to hurry up and wait. You're often sitting and waiting, sometimes for hours at a time, while a special effect rig is getting prepped, while lightings are being changed, while the set is being moved. So you find ways to occupy your time. Many people are, gamers. Many people, and I do read as well. Many people scroll social media, and I try to write. I love writing, so I'm always writing. And at the moment, I currently have, Count Crowley, Mediocre Midnight Monster Hunter Volume 3 just came out. So I'm gearing up ideas for the future of that. I've been writing Knights vs. Samurai for Image Comics. The final issue of our first volume just dropped. I have Creature Commandos at DC. The 6th issue in that series comes out this upcoming week. I'm writing 2 different ongoing series, one for Dark Horse and one for Panic Studios with my partner Leah Kilpatrick. And with Leah, I've done a one-shot for DC called DC Horror Presents. We did The Headless Horseman 2 years in a row for Dark Horse. And I'm writing a Kolchak one-shot. If anybody remembers Kolchak the Night Stalker, I got to do a cool Kolchak. And Lucas Kettner, my artist collaborator from Count Crowley, worked on that. So there's a lot of different genres, characters, all of them except for Creature Commandos are mine, which is really cool. I love writing other people's characters and getting to develop with Creature Commandos. That was a dream for me because I grew up loving them. Oh, and I just did a cool one-off for Venom. If anybody's a Venom fan in the Marvel Venomverse, that will be coming out in April. But I tell you, you just have to be really good at time management. I have a company called Good Fiend Films, and it's a very small organization. It's like 4 of us, but I have a lot of great help from the team, and we're developing, writing, producing films like Late Night with the Devil. We've got Boulet Brothers projects that I collaborate on. We have a number of television, both reality and scripted and movie projects that we're developing, and I have, as I get older, I get really into, as I think about my mental health, my physical health, how does my day start and how many hours a day is it healthy for me to be working? How many hours a day should I just put all work aside and just focus on meditation, prayer, doing my gratitude work, doing whatever I need to be doing to keep myself present, and then focusing on time with my kids, which is really important, focusing on time with partner or friends, and then the work. And yes, I think I probably, in many regards, work more hours than a normal healthy person would regard work schedule. If maybe 12 hours a day sometimes is the amount of time I work, but I just try to find that balance so that I'm not burning out or starting to feel dark about it. I'm still at a place where every time I get to get on that laptop, get on a meeting, get into working on something, I get excited about it, and I feel so lucky for that.
Well, and as a fellow comic writer, content creator, I think that one of the things is that you're actually pulling on a completely different skill set to be a comic writer, because the scripting is completely different than the way you would write a script for, say, a movie. In a movie, if you've got a scene where you're guy comes around the corner and he hits the guy with an axe, you can have that as one line in a movie script, but to have that in a comic script, it might be 4 or 5 different panels with different actions there. Talk to us about how you're able to switch back and forth. Like you said, you could be on the set ready to film, and now you're okay, I have to switch my mind into gear B while I'm also preparing to go act in gear A. How are you able to switch that back and forth so quickly?
You know what works, and I'm so lucky, I get to be around so many talented people, when I'm working. Right now, I'm currently working on Dexter Resurrection in New York City. And I get to be around those writers and directors and actors like Michael C. Hall, or Peter Dinklage, or all these other incredible artists that are a part of the show. I take every little thing that I learn and get inspired by being around these people and learning from them and working with them, and then I will go and try and imbue that into the story story is story is story is story. So whether you're telling a story through a comic book, whether you're telling a story through a television script, or you're telling a story just to be sitting around with your friends telling a story. Storytelling is one of the oldest and most important traditions we have. It's what connects us. It's what helps us feel less alone in this world. And the better I am at telling stories, the more people might be able to see themselves in my story, regardless of age, race, gender, whatever. I feel like it's just, to me, when I think about what is the biggest goal I have as a storyteller, do I want people to buy the books and like my work? Yes. Do I want people to have a special experience with it? Yes. But the most important thing to me, when I feel like we really nail it, is that somebody who's watching or reading it feels a little bit less alone for a second. And so every time I'm around storytellers, especially ones that I look up to and admire, I just try to constantly be picking little tidbits and inspiration, and then I surround myself with people who elevate my work. Like my partner Leah, I mean, we write a lot of horror stuff together, but I feel like my comedy writing has improved a great deal the last few years, because that's a skill that she's got more of than I do, you know?
So with all the changes that are going on right now in the comic industry, for those of you that aren't in the comic industry, you may not have an understanding of the things that are going on. There's been bankruptcies with distributors, things like that. Does it make you have any kind of worry about where your titles might go? Do you think that it might change how people are going to be getting it more online? Do you think that things are going to work themselves out in that respect?
You know, I think there's always going to be an appetite. There's always going to be people who are excited to go to comic shops or conventions, or are looking for scary stories to read in the dark. So, is it uncomfortable riding the waves of shifts and changes in the industry? Is it it's uncomfortable for sure sometimes to not know, because we get into patterns of knowing. We get into patterns of feeling secure in the way you write a comic. You're with let's say you're with a major publisher or an independent publisher, and they've got a relationship with a distributor who knows how to get the books to the comic shops. There's a pattern, there's a way things work, and then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, one of the most important middlemen in the business has declared bankruptcy. How are we going to get our stuff to people? I feel like there's always a way. When there's a demand, if you've got a supply, it will find its way. It's a digital renaissance right now. So we're also finding ways through the advent of technology and self-promotion and self-publication that you can get things out. That doesn't scare me. I think what scares me is just this radical, giant uprising we've seen around us lately, where the people who I think are the most marginalized and most vulnerable are being attacked and threatened by a really disgusting tyrant and tyrannical form of government. That scares me. And that's why in the horror community, I don't give a shit who you are, where you are, who you want to kiss, who you want to love, how you want to present. You are safe with us, and it makes me so angry, because I know that a lot of people from the outside look at us in the horror community and think we're the bad guys, or and we're not. We're here to protect you, and you're safe here, and that's the only thing that really scares me right now.
And I can tell you from working other conventions, Spookala and this horror community to me is the best, period.
It is.
You
There's
guys
so
agree?
much love. Whether people vote the same doesn't matter. Whether people are of the same political, religious affiliation doesn't matter. your safety is #1 priority, and the fact that that's being endangered in any way, we stick together. So yeah, I love our horror community, and I love the comic community. I love nerds. We gotta stick together, nerds. Come on. Revenge of the Nerds. Better watch out. We're gonna do a sequel, but it's a horror movie.
All right, so unlike yesterday, for David's panel, we had the mic walking around because we know there were so many questions out there. Today we're gonna have the open mic, but because this is the David Dastmalchian Comics panel and writing panel, let's try to make sure that the questions stay in that lane so that way we're sticking with the panel. So if you have a question, jump on up here to the mic.
There's a mic right up here. Get in line. All right. Step right up. Kiki.
Yes.
Hi. You're all right. You're all right.
Okay. I wanted to know, is there a comic book or franchise that you want to see in your vision or write in your vision?
So the comic book or franchise, I'd say IP, that I would love to get a chance to explore. There are a few. I'm a big fan on the indie side of series like Hack Slash. I think it would be really cool to do something with that space. I think that Hellboy has always been the BPRD universe. I'd like to take a little maybe side path to get to do a side story in the BPRD. I love the Goon. I don't know if anybody's a fan of or read the Goon. I think it would be really cool to do something with the Goon. I recently, speaking of adjacent to the Goon, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Kyle MacDonald stories that Steve Niles created. I got to do a Jerry meets Cal in a really cool criminal macabre Count Crowley crossover. That was fun. Mainstream, bigger publishers, you know, everybody has their X-Men, their whatever, their dream. I want to get to do my own Midnight Suns or Dark story arc in Marvel. I'd love, Morbius has always been one of my favorite characters. I want to do something like Morbius meets Man-Wolf. And then in DC, I'm such a horror nerd. I want to do something with, it'd be great to team up some of the Legion of Doom from the back in the day and give it a little vintage feel and get to see Solomon Grundy hanging out with Scarecrow, but old school Scarecrow. That's a lot. I mean, listen to me, I'm such a kid still. You give me a chance, I'll write on anything.
Thank you.
I think we can see how he's able to write when there's breaks on the set right now. Are you telling me Kiki's the only one that has
no
a
other
question?
questions?
Come on, I know there's
okay,
more questions.
I like his shirt. That's a great shirt. You win the day.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, man. Thanks for being back.
Thank you for being here. I'm a giant fan of cosmic horror, and I firmly believe there is a big connection between cosmic horror and mental health with a lot of stories and films that have been out there. I would love to see you write some sort of cosmic horror. Is there an idea kicking around that you've had for years that has never come to light, or a peek behind the curtain of you just come up with a story and say, hey, comic company, this is what I have, or?
Sure. Interestingly, there's an idea I have that falls under that genre category of cosmic horror. I think that cosmic horror is such a special and fertile ground. I think the intersection of science fiction and horror to me is one of my favorite places to be a fan and an audience member. And you think about movies that really blew your mind, like Event Horizon or something. And there's so many great comics out in that space, but still not as many as there could be. Black Science was a really good exploration of that world. I have this idea for a consciousness jumping event that takes place, and it's something that's coming in from another galaxy that's affecting humanity in a way that causes our consciousness to transcend between individuals. And I thought it would be really interesting to explore, because it's so often hard for us to, and I mean all of us, even those of us who try really hard to be as aware as possible of others and what they're going through. But we've all been in that place where maybe somebody who's not doing mentally well like freaks you out walking into a grocery store, in the parking lot of your Starbucks, and you're just trying to enjoy your day, and all of a sudden you get like jostled by somebody, but you don't know what that person is going through or what they've been through or what mental health issues they've got. And then when I've got kids as a parent, they go, well, how come that person doesn't take medicine? I'm like, sometimes they're so sick they don't even know they need medicine. It's very hard to quantify that stuff. So in the space of cosmic horror, I thought it would be very interesting to, like, especially if you're a person that thinks you understand how the world operates, if all of a sudden your consciousness jumped into the body of that person, or all of a sudden you were struggling with that stuff, and it was almost like the way AI is starting to utilize data points and, you know, forms of energy absorption that could not necessarily be the way that we've been used to it. Now data transfer and consciousness, whatever that means, is shifting a lot. I think it would be a really neat place to play. So that's a story of mine that I haven't sold yet, that I want to develop more, but I'm glad you asked that question, because it's something I think about a lot. And yeah, good old cosmic horror. It's such a great genre. Somebody cast me in a good space horror soon. I want to do that. Me and Brian Fuller dressed up like two characters from Alien this year for Halloween, and it was so fun. I did my best Harry Dean Stanton, and I even had my cat. It was pretty great. Hey, how you doing?
Okay, hey, a couple years ago, DC started taking some of their Hanna-Barbera properties, turning them into comic books. Surprisingly good stuff came out of that, with the stuff they did with Scooby, and even Jabberjaw made an appearance. Is there like an old Saturday morning cartoon that you would just say, why isn't this a comic book? Why aren't we writing this yet?
I loved what DC did with when they got the rights to a lot of those properties, and I don't know if anyone else is familiar with those, but that was fun for me, especially with my daughter, to get into some of the Scooby series that they were running with, because it was a good gateway, because she was already familiar with that character. I would love to do a Scooby story, like a run with the Scooby Gang. Those were some of the first monsters I was introduced to as a kid, and I really love that world. Thundar the Barbarian would be pretty cool to do something with. Obviously, they're already doing something with Thundercats, which I loved. There's a lot of like niche like horror cartoons too that came on when we were kids that only lasted like a season or two, but yeah, I mean, anything that had monsters in it I loved and wanted to do something with.
So this next guy, he's actually in the comic book industry.
Yeah,
so I know that.
and I got a beautiful Dr. Fearless like piece I got to sign today that he made, an actual cool comic. Yeah.
Thank you. Being that you're in the fairly unique position of being prolific on the screen and prolific in the writing industry, is there any consideration of bringing some of your IPs like Crowley or Headless Horseman to the screen?
One of my dreams, and I have a great deal of hope, is getting to be on set someday and seeing some badass actor putting on the makeup of Jerry Bartman, becoming Count Crowley, like on set, like a live action iteration of Count Crowley, the series. I think about Knights versus Samurai and I go, oh my God, this would be such a cool, I mean, expensive. If you can help me find the studio that's willing to invest in a project that has knights, samurai, dragons, oni, ogres, witches, all manner of every kind of mythological beast, I think there's an audience out there for it, and I believe if the characters are compelling and their relationships really have stakes and we actually are invested in these stories, there's a way to get audiences to gear up for it. But yes, the answer is yes, I would love to, and I've got 2 series coming next year, both of which I think would make freaking phenomenal either series or movies. So we'll see, you guys. Just thank you. And if you like my comics and you support them, that's one way we help see them keep having life. But I also, just one sidebar, I love fan art, and I love when people, like, you know, make and craft cool things inspired by the characters and the stuff that I've done. So if you're a creator out there and you do that kind of stuff, please make it, take pictures of it, sell it, post it on Instagram, tag me, and if I see something I really like, we'll get in touch and see if there's some way to collab, you know? Hi. Great shirt. Not a bad movie.
That's all right. Kind of love it. I'm kidding. Grave Concussions. Oh my God. That podcast is just unbelievable.
Thank you.
Good? Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you have a dream guest that you'd like to get into a casket? Pick their brain? And secondly, if the roles were reversed, who would you want to do?
Okay.
Say the last one again.
This is a question about Grave Conversations. Has everybody seen Grave Conversations? I'm so proud of this show. It is so wonderful. I'm a brand ambassador, go figure, for a casket company. It's so on brand for me, called Titan Casket. They're actually an incredible company. If anyone's had any familiarity with the end-of-life business, it is a business, and there's an industry out there, and often a predatory business. And the federal law states that if you go into a funeral home and you're trying to bury a loved one, you can use any casket as long as it is up to code from wherever. And often they'll try to make you feel like you're kind of, it's like buying a car. They'll be like, this is your only option, this is what you got to take. So Titan has tried to change the script, and they provide caskets that people don't need to take a loan out to buy. They're very inexpensive, and anyway, the point of that is we now do a show for YouTube called Grave Conversations. Please check it out. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff. But all the YouTube links, go there. I lay in a casket next to another casket, and usually a friend, somebody in entertainment, gets in, and we just did some wonderful ones. Lauren Lavera from the Terrifier films did one that was awesome. But if there's so many people I want to get in the casket still, I would really love to do an interview with Nick Offerman. I think that would be really cool. I would dream of getting Jamie Lee Curtis in the casket. The Boulay brothers. What do you think? Should we do like a double casket and see if we can get the Boulays in a double?
Yes.
All right, put it out there, put it out there, put it out there, internet. And then who would I want to be interviewed if I got to get in the casket and be interviewed? Stephen King.
Oh! Perfect answer.
Hi.
So during the time of COVID, a lot of stuff happened, like creativity-wise. There was like a resurgence of that stuff where people found time to like build on that. How did you find time to like focus on that creativity with COVID since you started your comics in 2019?
So this is really dark for me. 2019, January, beginning of February, we wrapped production on The Suicide Squad. The previous summer, we'd wrapped production on Dune. I was shooting a TV show as well, overlapping with that, called Reprisal for Hulu. So I had all these really cool, exciting projects. I was so excited for 2019, 2020. I'm sorry, 2020, January, February of 2020 was when we wrapped production on The Suicide Squad. We'd been shooting in 2019 and then wrapped in February of 2020. Count Crowley had just started coming out 6 months before. It was this big hit for Dark Horse. So I was writing volume 2, and then COVID happened. And everything stopped, and all these movies that were supposed to come out and my comic books that were supposed to come out stopped. My kids are suddenly going from having a social life and being at school to like being at home with me. We were mid-construction on our house, so we had plastic up everywhere. It was the weirdest thing. It was like living in a simulation. And I was, the week that everything shut down completely, like everything, when everyone was told, like, don't leave your house, on a Friday night, I looked at my checking account balance and it was almost at like 0. And I was like, what is happening? And I got a phone call from my bank, and they said, did you approve these transactions? I said, no. And they said, okay, give us, we'll text you a code or something, and then give us the code and we can help you. Well, what I didn't realize, I was in the middle of a complete scam, and I was getting scammed. And I was on the phone with this person for hours, giving away all kinds of important information and getting totally drained of like all of our money. And by the time I realized that I'd been taken to the cleaners and I got off and tried to call the real Chase, all their phone centers were shut down because everyone had all of a sudden been told to go home. So you couldn't get a hold of anybody to help you. And the person that I finally spoke to at like midnight was like, oh, you have to go to an in-person. And there was one in-person bank open the next day because they'd shut everything else down. Oh my God, you guys, I was losing my mind. So in the middle of being on hold for 8 hours, just to be told, I can't help you, go to an in-person bank. While I was on hold, the other line rang in and it was my editor for Count Crowley. And I was like, hey, tell me something good. And she said, I can't. We're shelving Count Crowley. We're stopping all publication right now. And so your book is now possibly canceled. And I was like, oh my God. Needless to say, I woke up in the morning to go to get in the car to drive to the one bank that was open where they could help me, and our car had been stolen. This is a true story. I mean, talk about like nervous breakdown shit. Not to mention the world's just like on fire. You know, everyone's like, what is happening? But I had writing. Whether it was ever gonna get sold or published or made into another Dark Horse series or a movie or a TV show, I had my writing and I just kept journaling and writing throughout the pandemic. And I'm telling you, whether you think you've got a shot at getting published or not, if you need to write and you love to write and you get joy and satisfaction out of it, even if it's just journaling, just writing about your feelings, I highly recommend entering that into a daily practice for yourself. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 55 minutes, it can be 5 hours, but any one of us can find 5 to 10 minutes a day to just jot your ideas and your dreams down. And you might say, oh, I'm never gonna get anywhere with it. You'd be surprised if every day you can commit to just do that for yourself. Don't look at it as some kind of like, you know, the way we look at going to the gym sometimes, the way we look at like doing the things that are good for us, like a chore. Try to flip the script. You're doing something for yourself. You're doing something for yourself that is actually going to give you a lot more sense of self and joy and love than, and I do this every night. I argue with myself over, am I going to have another Snickers bar? Like, I promise you, it's such a great way to feed yourself. So try it. Do we have time for more? How are we doing?
For sure.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I was wondering if there were any lesser-known Marvel or DC characters that you either like reading or would love to write about someday.
Lesser-known DC characters that I would like to write about. DC in particular, there are a lot of... I'm not done with Abracadabra, first of all. I don't know if anybody was a fan of The Flash, the CW's Flash. It's a good show. I played Abracadabra on The Flash. I love that character. He's so ridiculous, and he just makes so little sense. And that is sometimes really a great, horrifying villain to bring to life in the comics or on screen, because when you can untap whatever that thing is that motivates them, it's like usually a lot more disturbing than just wealth or power or greed. I already said this earlier, but Solomon Grundy is like one of my favorite DC characters. He doesn't get nearly enough attention. I had Lucas Kettner do me a favor. I hired him, he drew this. I should take a picture of it and publish it at some point, but he drew me a picture of Jerry Bartman with Batman, so Count Crowley and Batman fighting Solomon Grundy in a haunted graveyard in New Orleans, and I gave it as a gift to Jim Lee, and it was really, really cool. Did you guys get to, anybody read our DC Horror Presents one shot this year? Thank you, sir. There's one person in the crowd and I love him. We did a story based on Dollhouse. Does anybody know that character? Doll Maker's daughter. She is real effed up, and we did a really cool one-shot where you can check it out. Some people have been getting them at the table, but I like horror. What can I say? And I love the characters that reflect horror. Professor Pig. So many fun characters. Okay, there he is! Sir.
I apologize in advance if this was asked already, I just got here. But what are the main differences between working with Christopher Nolan and James Gunn? What's the biggest takeaway you had for your career working with both of them?
The biggest difference between working with Christopher Nolan and James Gunn? They're just two different human beings. I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I think what's really interesting to me is because I have worked with, in my humble opinion, some of the greatest directors of our time. James effing Gunn. Like, he's definitely one of the greatest writer-directors and creators and filmmakers of our lifetime. Christopher Nolan, I mean, one of the greatest minds of cinema. Denis Villeneuve, one of the great geniuses of film. David Lynch, personal hero to me, one of the great legends of cinema, and many, many others. I've been spoiled by who I've gotten to work with. What I would say is the thing that they all have in common is a singularity and just uncanny power of vision. The way that they may bring that vision to life or express that vision, I think, is what makes them unique and specific as directors. But the unifying trait in all of them is they have this just crystal clear, deep, abiding vision for what they're looking to accomplish. And all of them get that like twinkle in their eye that you see when a kid is opening, their Ghostbusters present that they really wanted for their birthday. They get that same glimmer when the magic is happening, and I love that. I always feel like that's the biggest reward I get is when I'm doing a scene and you see the director after a take and they've got that they get that glimmer and you know that you gave them what they needed. It's the best feeling.
All right, good stuff. We're going to rock through these 3 questions, and I have a couple of follow-ups before we wrap this up. All right, what's your name again, Matt?
Jeff, you brought up Stephen King before. Marvel, years ago, brought Dark Tower, The Stand, into comic form. It would be killer if you would get with Mike Flanagan to be the Man in Black. Just saying. Put that into the universe. Is there a story or character from Stephen King that you would like to take on and create a story of?
In the comic book space, something that would be really cool for me to play with in the Stephen King pantheon, and there are many, a Graveyard Shift on. I mean, who doesn't want to do a story about giant subterranean rats taking over a small town? But I would love to see Christine as an ongoing series character that could be anthological, and like the way Christine keeps showing up, and maybe as different vehicles, maybe the spirit like transfers into I don't know, a Charger, and then it transfers into a little Prius. I mean, there could be so many fun stories with that, I love the idea of a kid trying to do their driving test in a car that's like Christine, that's just homicidal.
Hi, I'm at university for animation, so I have a question. As a creative, I find a lot of my classmates end up burned out, or they end up hating what they do. And I personally feel like being creative and investing in those endeavors, you should enjoy it. So what is your advice on maintaining that enjoyment with outside and internal pressures?
It's tough to say. I think when people are in their training phase of their journey, it's when a lot of people figure out if what they're doing is a hobby or a career. Because if it's a hobby, then I think you should do it as it brings you joy and as like a daily practice of just mental wellness, because it's something that you do for yourself, like doing pottery or doing, many people do community theater, do shows without looking at it as a career path. And then they can do it and enjoy the fun part of it. When it's your career, there's a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of that sacrifice means showing up when you didn't get enough rest, when you really wish you could be hanging out with your friends, when you really want to be able to do something else. And it's not always going to be joy. There is a discipline in it. For me, writing is a discipline. I'm not nearly as good of a writer as I think I am an actor. It takes I worked very hard, and I continue to train and work as an actor, but the writing for me is like sculpture. It's just there is a lot of showing up and sitting down and opening the laptop, even when maybe I don't necessarily feel like it. So that's where the wheat and the chaff gets kind of separated, I think, is in the understanding of, is this really what I want to do for a career? Or is this what I want to do because I love it? And because if you love it, writing, drawing, animation, acting, you should do it. You want to do it as a career, that's just a different reality, and there's, it just means you have to be willing to say, I'm willing to be poor, and I'm willing to struggle forever because I love doing this that much. Yeah.
That was a really good question. All right, last question from the audience.
Great shirt.
Thank you. First of all, I just wanted to say, as somebody in the death industry, I also really do love the Grave Conversation show.
Thank you.
I'm a mortician and looking to go to school for forensic pathology.
Awesome.
But as a creator, I'm also like a perfectionist. So in terms of like when you're creating something, how do you get over the fear of not creating something that like you envision it to be? Like, how do you go through those blocks?
That's a great question. As a writer, creator, I've had to let go of expectation on a daily discipline basis. I have hope and I have dreams, and that is the way I try to live my life. I try to live my life one day at a time, even sometimes 1 hour at a time, and I do my best to try and communicate what it is that I'm hoping for, and I can do that through communicating with people that are a part of my life or with my collaborators by the way that I write scripts, and I try to be as clear of a communicator through the script, through the dialogue, through the description of the scenes, etc. Finding creative partners who, based on their previous work, seem to have the ability to manifest stuff that I could only dream of. And then I turn it over to them, and then I wait. And then sometimes I get the email and I open the JPEG or the PDF, and I just am blown away, and I can't sit down for 8 hours because it's so beautiful, and sometimes it's not exactly what I dreamed or hoped it would be. But when I have expectation and I'm sitting there waiting with an expectation of this is exactly how this is going to be and this is what it needs to be, I'm ultimately resentful and disappointed. When I have hope, then it shapes a different way of receiving what people interpreted as the way that I was communicating. And if it doesn't nail it, instead of looking at their failings, I try to look at myself first and go, maybe I didn't write that as clearly as I could have. Maybe I didn't explain during that Zoom as well as I should have. Maybe I didn't ask the questions that I wish that I had. But it's the mercy of the magic of collaboration, and I love collaboration. It's the best.
All right, so I have 2 wrap-up questions for you. So when Steph and I over at Insymmetry Creations do comic writing panels, we'll say, people ask us, how do I get into this, and how do you structure things? And we'll say, know what your concept is, know what your climax is, and then understand how long it takes you to get there. That's how we do it. when you are scripting, when you are writing your comics, do you have a David Dastmalchian way of doing it? Do you understand where you're going to be going as you're working the pathway to get there? Or do you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants and then like, hey, this is a great climax. I didn't even know that's what was going to happen when I got this idea.
I love outlining. I'm big into outlining and treatmenting and writing through. So let's say I'm going to do a 6-issue arc. I really think it's important for me to know, like, this is where I would like us to land. Now, I'm open to making discoveries and that changing and evolving as time happens and as the writing process happens. But I know I've got 6 issues to get this team from a bunch of people that can't stand each other and distrust one another to starting to forge friendship and overcoming, you know, this if you're reading my Creature Commandos right now, the US government at the moment believes the Creature Commandos to be enemies of the state. So it's like, how do I land us there? So it's a really strong cliffhanger, and this team that really distrusted and disliked one another is starting to find some kindred spiritness between them from where we're beginning. So I will outline and treatment stuff. I like to find visual references for my outlines, and then I talk to my artist. I love being partnered with an artist before I script, because then I can say to the artist, how do you like scripts? What are the best ways for scripts? So I don't think I've ever written 2 series the same. There's always variations based on the artist partner that I have. And then I build, but certainly I'll make a discovery halfway through the volume of writing something and go, oh, maybe I'm not going to let this character live through issue 4, which is going to change some things, but that's okay.
And then my last question is, Marvel, DC, those are the 2 names that everybody really knows out there in comics. What you probably don't know is the number 3 place to actually get comics is Kickstarter. Kickstarter and crowdfunding is the 3rd most profitable place. Would you ever take one of your titles and bring it back to, say, Kickstarter to do a special edition, or would you ever start a brand new title in a crowdfunding format, or would you rather have it always be going to a major publisher for there to be the launch?
There are a lot of independent publishers who have direct-to-market ways of distribution. Companies like Distillery, Boom, IDW, Image, Dark Horse. I support many crowdfunding campaigns. I'd have a difficult time putting myself into a crowdfunding, because then I feel like you're selling to your audience something that may change in production for me. I like to know I have the freedom of knowing that, like I said, halfway through something could shift or change, and I might be I've always been a little bit nervous about getting people's expectation for something that they would be receiving if they invested at a certain tier. So we'll see, but I'm always open to finding new ways to getting products to market and finding ways to connect with readers in particular. Audiences are why I do what I do. Like, I don't do this in a vacuum. I care deeply about what, I mean, when I'm filming, I think about what is the audience going to think of this? When I'm writing, I think, how are my readers going to respond to this? So I'm certainly open to it. But I haven't done it yet, and it would have to be the right project, and but I hope anybody knows, if you ever see me asking you to support me on a crowdfunding site, you know, like, how seriously I considered doing it, because it's very important to me, and I'm probably subscribing to some crowdfunding campaign at least every other week for something I see that goes, that looks cool, sign me up for tier 3, I want the extra stickers.
Well, that's great. Hey, by the way, we're on Kickstarter right now, so no, that was not a loaded question. Anyways, you guys know what we have to do right now before he leaves the stage. What do we have to do? We've already done this once for him. It's Corey. Now, I don't think you're going to give us your best Teletubby voice. Corey. Okay, so before we take this picture, how awesome was it, Spookala audience, for David Dastmalchian to come up here and do 2 different panels? Spent 2 hours of his life up here imparting knowledge to you.
Thank you very much. I keep getting freaked out because there's 2 ghost face, like, just statues over there, but I keep looking over, I think there's there's 3? Ah, shit. Give me the creeps. There's a really great cosplay down here in the second row, everybody.
When they said, you gotta show the dog, let them see the dog. The dog is in costume too. When they sat down, I started cracking up. I'm like, that's amazing. It's incredible.
You really nailed it. I've seen some great cause here. Good job, everybody.
All right, so one last time, let's give it up for the one and the only David Dastmalchian.